Hey guys, obviously I'm wearing a different shirt to signify that I didn't just film all these sit down videos in one night. Just disregard the fact that the background's completely the same. I want to share with you some books that I have recently been reading. Not all of them I've finished, not all of them I've even really started necessarily, but they caught my attention. So far I've liked them. And I'll do this fairly quickly because there's a lot of them, but I've seen a lot of people ask which books I've been reading, and they want to know how I do research for my videos. I don't necessarily plan to have these books turn into videos eventually, but if I come across kind of an interesting idea or something, I will most likely turn it into a video. So here we go. So this first one is called Psychopolitics. It's by a Korean philosophy professor at the University of Berlin named Byung-Chul Han. And it is, I honestly just picked it up because the cover is really cool. Most of my selections are because of the cover of the book, because I'm very shallow. And the title is I don't know, I like it. I studied political science originally, and then now I'm studying psychology. So it was just up my alley. But he immediately in the book presents a bunch of very interesting ideas. His main kind of point is that this individual liberty that's preached by neoliberalism is actually a sort of form of exploitation, to the point where, it kind of reminds me of Eagleton's idea where the liberty in liberalism means that we are free in the sense that we're free to be at each other's throats. We're free to basically disagree with each other, to fight each other, but there's no sort of collaboration or unity. And he kind of specifically talks about, in this book, labor, and that we become both the master and the slave because we view ourselves as these personal projects that we're free to perfect or achieve in some way. And this leads to this sort of inner exploitation. So these institutions that Marx would talk about that used to dominate the forces of production, humans, laborers, they don't actually have to do anything anymore. We ourselves feel this constant need to be productive and to kind of be slaves to ourselves. We have also enslaved the master in a sense. And there's other things I'm thinking about, he brings up the panopticon, that we're kind of willingly engaging in a panopticon whenever we stream or make YouTube videos. I don't know, I haven't finished it. It's not necessarily a super easy read, but I wouldn't say it's a hard read. The way he writes is very kind of direct. He says, he basically comes up with an entire idea every single sentence, and they all kind of lead together. It's not confusing, it's just some of the ideas are very deep, obviously. The next book is Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. I originally was actually going to buy Siddhartha because I heard that was an amazing book, but I'm really enjoying this so far. I don't necessarily understand what it's about, but it's so far this guy that is dealing with the fact that he has these very kind of romantic, almost animalistic primal aspirations, and at the same time he has this sort of romance for the bourgeoisie and the moderation and the sort of human intellectual element of our nature. He is constantly torn, and there's very few moments where he's happy. And it's very well written. I already have so many passages highlighted because a lot of them really relate to me, and I feel it would relate to a lot of people. And even the preface that Hesse writes is him talking about how many people have written to him since the book was published, and they relate to the main character, and that maybe this isn't the best thing, but I don't usually read fiction, and I'm definitely going to finish this because it's very interesting, very good read. He's a very good writer. I still want to read Siddhartha eventually, so this is a good precursor. And from what I remember, he was influenced by Nietzsche, I believe, or it's the other way around because I'm very bad with historical figures and who was born before who and who influenced who, but I know that there's some sort of intellectual lineage there. Then we have How to Be an Animal. This is a philosophy book that kind of deals with human nature and all of the kind of beliefs and ideologies we have formed in order to distance ourselves from animals or creatures. Because, I mean, we've all had the kind of thought, like, what really separates me from like a dog or an ape? I mean, I remember having like disturbing experiences at like the zoo where you're just like looking at the orangutan like through the glass, and it's like, holy crap, like this thing's like kind of human, like in a way, and you're kind of like, this is kind of messed up, and what really kind of separates us from them. And it's kind of a philosophical take on that. I haven't read too much of it so far, but it's not a super hard read. It's pretty interesting. I would definitely recommend. Oh yeah, this one's dark. This is Night Falls Fast, and I will not say the exact subtitle because I will get demonetized because of this one specific word, but it is about people that take their own lives and the phenomenon of that, and the author herself had dealt with this experience, and it's quite dark. There's a lot of illustrations. I mean, there's literally one illustration of like this like very young child who had thoughts of taking their life, and it's very graphic. Like they show you like what they drew, and it's like there's like a gun to their head, and they talk about like an analysis of like notes that people write before they take their lives, and how they all kind of follow a similar sort of narrative. I'm interested in this stuff, but I definitely don't have like the courage to read it for very long. I can't stomach it for very long. And it's incredibly dark. If you're interested in this sort of thing, I would recommend, but obviously not everybody can deal with reading hundreds and hundreds of pages of just incredibly dark material in a fairly kind of objective scientific sense. It's really like an investigation of the whole problem, especially that it's an epidemic in younger people nowadays, like around my age and even younger. Next we have Why Marx Was Right, and I don't actually know very much about Marxism, and I think this was pointed out in one comment one time that was someone said, "You don't seem to understand leftist values at all," which I guess that's fair. I come from a very like right-leaning area in my country, and I never deliberately exposed myself to leftist ideas, but I'm open to them, and I'm still establishing some sort of coherent political beliefs. And so far, the case being made by Terry Eagleton, who wrote this book, is, I would say, fairly valid, because he really breaks down each chapter is a critique of Marxism that I have heard, that a lot of them I thought were fairly sound, like the idea that like Marx thinks human nature is very like idyllic and there's no self-interest, or that Marx was utopian, or that Marx was like a historical determinist. And he breaks it down in a very fun kind of metaphorical way. He uses a lot of kind of humorous like references, and I've read his other book like After Theory, which I really liked a lot, and he seems to have a sort of affinity towards classical philosophy and a little bit of distaste for postmodern philosophers. So his views are very cut and dry. They're very just like, this is a Marxist angle. He doesn't really bring in any like deconstructionism or anything. This is what Marx was trying to say. I like it so far. It's really educating me on what Marxism is in a very kind of fun, easy to digest way. Not to say it's like extremely easy to read, but it's easy enough to read for someone like me. Finally, we have Becoming Myself, and this is by a psychiatrist who they're really just kind of ranting in a coherent way. They're talking about their life, their sort of how they've established a lot of their beliefs. It's quite charming, and it really gives you a lot of like perspective into like what really affects a psychiatrist, the sort of personal philosophies they carry, a lot of like their actual hands-on like clinical experience. And a lot of it deals with like death and kind of accepting the impermanence of things. And it's a very beautifully written book. I haven't read that far into it. So far, I'd recommend it. But yeah, those are all of the books that I have bought, because I have this terrible habit where I just go to a bookstore and I buy way too many books, and then I'm really bad at finishing them. But I'm going to try very, very hard to read these books, finish them, actually process them before school starts. Let me know what you guys are reading right now. Let me know if you guys are reading any of the same books as me right now. Yeah, that's everything. I'll see you next time.